The year is 1244. It is the deep, dark heart of winter in the High Alps. The world outside the thick granite walls of the Sanctuary of Saint Jude is a void of white and gray, a place where the wind howls a ceaseless, hollow note against the mountainside. But here, inside the stone keep, the air is still. The air is heavy with the scent of aged oak, beeswax candles, and the faint, sweet dust of dried herbs. Here, time does not rush. It does not march. It drips slowly like honey from a spoon, thick and golden and quiet. This is a place of healing, though not through knife or needle. The cure for the ailment known as the winter hysteria, the agitation of the spirit caused by the howling winds and the biting frost, is found in the profound monotony of warmth. It is found in the silence. It is found in the rhythmic, predictable order of the hours. Brother Thomas stands by the heavy oak door of the apothecary, his hand resting on the iron latch. The metal is cool beneath his palm, a stark contrast to the enveloping warmth of the wool robe that hangs heavy on his shoulders. He does not open the door yet. He simply stands, breathing in the silence of the corridor. The floor beneath his feet is made of slate, quarried from the very mountain they inhabit, worn smooth by centuries of soft leather sandals shuffling back and forth. Each stone is unique, a map of gray and charcoal veins, cold to the touch but solid, unmoving, permanent. He lifts the latch. The mechanism is well oiled with rendered fat, and it rises with a dull, satisfying clack, a sound that is swallowed immediately by the tapestry-hung walls. The door swings inward on heavy iron hinges, making no squeak, only a low rush of air as the pressure between the hallway and the room equalizes. Inside the apothecary, the light is dim and amber. A fire burns in the great hearth on the far wall, a fire that has not been allowed to die out since the first snow fell in October. The logs are large, seasoned oak, dense and slow-burning. They do not crackle or pop with the violent energy of pine. Rather, they glow with a steady, pulsating heat, consuming themselves in a slow, dignified surrender to the flame. The heat radiates outward, a physical presence that presses against the skin, soothing the muscles, weighing down the eyelids. Thomas moves to the work table. It is a massive slab of timber, scarred by generations of knives and stained by 1,000 spilled tinctures. It smells of anise, of valerian root, of dried orange peel brought up from the southern lands in the autumn. His task tonight is simple. It is the same task as yesternight, and the same as it will be on the morrow. He is to prepare the evening draft for the guests in the quiet ward. He begins by arranging his tools. He moves with deliberate slowness, treating each object with reverence. First, the mortar and pestle. The mortar is heavy stone, black and cold. The pestle is white marble, smooth as an egg. He places them in the center of the table. Next, the jars. He walks to the shelves that line the walls, shelves that stretch up into the shadows of the rafters. There are hundreds of jars, ceramic and glass, each stoppered with cork or wax. He selects a jar of glazed blue pottery. He holds it in both hands, feeling its weight, the rough texture of the clay where the glaze has bubbled slightly in the kiln. He carries it to the table and sets it down. The sound of the ceramic settling against the wood is a soft thud. He selects a second jar, this one of brown earthenware, shorter and squatter. He places it beside the first. He unstopers the blue jar. The sound of the cork twisting and pulling free is a dry friction, a soft squeak that speaks of a tight seal. A scent drifts up, lavender. Not the fresh, sharp lavender of summer, but the deep, dusty, mellow scent of lavender that has slept in the dark for months. It is a smell of sleep itself. Thomas reaches in with a wooden scoop. He delves into the dried flowers, hearing the faint rustle, like the sound of dry leaves skittering over pavement. He lifts a scoopful of the purple-gray buds. He pours them into the mortar. They fall with a whisper. He repeats the process with the brown jar. This one contains the root of the valerian plant, chopped into coarse chunks and dried until they are hard as pebbles. The smell is earthy, pungent, grounding. It smells of the soil, of the deep roots that hold the earth together. He adds a measure to the mortar. Now begins the grinding. This is the rhythm of the evening. Thomas takes the pestle in his right hand. He fits the smooth marble end into the hollow of the stone mortar. He begins to rotate his wrist. Grind, crush, turn. The sound is gritty, a low friction of stone against herb, scrape, crunch, grind. It is a monotonous sound devoid of melody, consistent and unending. He works the pestle in a slow circle. He watches the dried roots break down. He watches the lavender buds turn to dust. The friction releases the oils and the scent in the room grows stronger, heavier. It is a cloud of relaxation that seems to lower the ceiling, to draw the walls closer. He grinds for 10 minutes. He does not rush. There is nowhere to go. The blizzard outside has buried the mountain passes. The world is closed. There is only this room, this fire, this task. Grind, turn, scrape. Once the powder is fine and consistent, Thomas sets the pestle aside. He picks up a small brush made of badger hair. He sweeps the powder into a pile in the center of the mortar. The bristles make a soft swish sound against the stone. He prepares the steeping pot. It is a heavy iron kettle hanging on a hook near the fire. He swings the arm of the hook out, bringing the kettle over the table. He pours water from a large pitcher into the kettle. The water is clear, melted from the snow gathered on the roof, pure and tasteless. He returns the kettle to the fire. Now he must wait. He pulls a stool close to the hearth and sits. The wood of the stool is polished smooth by centuries of sitting. He leans forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and watches the fire. He counts the bricks in the back of the fireplace. 1, 2, 3. They are blackened with soot, crumbling at the edges. 4, 5, 6. The mortar between them is gray and sandy. He watches a single flame lick up the side of a log. It is blue at the base, yellow in the middle, orange at the tip. It wavers, dances, settles. The heat dries his eyes, making them heavy. He blinks slowly. The water begins to heat. At first, there is no sound. Then, a faint singing, a high-pitched vibration as the tiny bubbles form on the bottom of the iron pot. It is a sound like a distant wind. Thomas listens to the pitch rise slowly, steadily. He does not stir. He watches the steam begin to curl off the surface of the water. It rises in white ribbons, twisting into the chimney draft, disappearing into the dark throat of the flue. The singing of the kettle deepens into a rumble. The water is near boiling. Thomas stands. The movement is stiff. The heat has seeped into his bones, making him lethargic. He takes the mortar and scrapes the herbal powder into the water. It hits the surface and swirls, darkening the liquid instantly. The smell of hot valerian and lavender fills the space, overpowering the wood smoke. He stirs the mixture once with a long wooden spoon, watching the eddy of the liquid spin round and round and round, until the motion slows and stops on its own. He swings the kettle away from the direct flame, letting it hang in the radiant heat to steep. It must sit for 20 minutes, not 15, not 19, 20. He turns the hourglass on the mantel. The sand begins to fall. Thomas watches the sand. It is a fine white sand, perhaps from a distant shore he has never seen. It slips through the narrow glass neck, grain by grain. It creates a tiny conical hill in the bottom bulb. The hill grows. The top bulb empties. There is no sound to this timekeeping, only the visual slide of the grains. It is mesmerizing. It demands nothing of him but his presence. While the tea steeps, Thomas takes a cloth and wipes the table. He moves the cloth in long, horizontal strokes, left to right, right to left. He wipes away the dust of the herbs. He wipes away the memory of the work. The wood gleams dully in the firelight. He picks up the jars. He walks them back to the shelf. He places the blue jar in its spot. He adjusts it so the label faces perfectly outward. He places the brown jar beside it. He checks the alignment. They are perfect. He returns to the fire. The sand is half gone. The fire has shifted. A log has settled deeper into the bed of coals with a soft whump and a shower of orange sparks that fly up and vanish before they hit the chimney back. He takes the iron poker and nudges the log, just a fraction of an inch. He pushes a stray ember back into the center of the heat. The metal poker scrapes against the stone hearth. Scrape. He sets the poker back in its stand. 10 minutes more. He looks at his hands. They are dry from the winter air, the knuckles slightly red. He rubs them together, the dry skin rasping softly. He holds them out to the fire, turning them over, feeling the heat penetrate the palms, then the backs. He feels the blood moving in his fingers, a slow, warm throbbing. The sand runs out. The last grain falls. The steep is finished. Thomas takes a tray from the sideboard. It is made of beaten copper, darkened with age. He places 3 ceramic mugs upon it. They are thick-walled mugs designed to hold heat. He lifts the kettle with a thick woolen pad to protect his hand from the hot iron handle. He pours the dark, steaming liquid into the first mug. The sound of the pouring is rich and liquid, a glug 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 that rises in pitch as the mug fills. Steam billows up, warm and moist against his face. He fills the second mug. He fills the third. He sets the kettle down. He covers the mugs with small wooden lids to keep the steam in. He picks up the tray. It is heavy, warm. He feels the heat of the mugs radiating through the copper bottom of the tray, warming his hands. He walks to the door of the apothecary. He shifts the weight of the tray to his left hand to lift the latch with his right. He steps out into the corridor. The hallway is colder than the apothecary, but not freezing. It is a cool, crisp temperature that wakes the senses gently. The stone walls here are lined with tapestries of wool, depicting scenes of harvest and sleep. The wool absorbs the sound of his footsteps. He walks slowly. He must not spill a drop. He focuses entirely on the level of the liquid inside the covered mugs. He feels the slight shift of the weight as the liquid sloshes gently with his stride. He walks down the long, dim corridor. Torches burn in iron sconces every 20 paces. They sputter softly, casting pools of yellow light on the floor. Between the torches there is shadow, deep and velvet. Thomas passes through the light, then the shadow, then the light, then the shadow. It is a hypnotic rhythm. He reaches the heavy wooden door of the quiet ward. This is where the patients lie. Those who have come with minds racing, with nerves frayed by the harshness of the world, with the hysteria of the cold. Here, they do nothing. They are wrapped in furs and wool. They stare at the fire. They sleep. Thomas balances the tray on one hand and pushes the door open with his shoulder. The hinges here are even more silent than the last. The room beyond is vast and low-ceilinged. The air is stiflingly warm, thick with the heat of 3 separate fireplaces. There are no candles here, only the glow of the hearths. The light is red and orange, shifting and low. 3 beds are arranged in the room, separated by heavy velvet curtains. He cannot see the occupants, only the mounds of heavy blankets rising and falling with slow, deep breaths. The silence in the room is absolute, save for the crackle of the fires and the wind outside, which here sounds like a distant memory, a mute thumping against the thick shutters. Thomas approaches the first bedside table. He sets the first mug down on the polished wood. He does not speak. He adjusts the handle of the mug so it is facing the bed, ready for the hand that will reach for it. He moves to the second bed. He sets the second mug down. He moves to the third. He stands in the center of the room for a moment. He listens. He hears the breathing of the sleepers, in, out, in, out. It is the rhythm of the sea, the rhythm of the wind, the rhythm of life at its most basic, most restful state. He feels the warmth of the room pressing against his heavy robes. He feels his own eyelids growing heavy. He turns and walks back to the door. He steps out into the cooler corridor. He pulls the door shut until the latch clicks. The sound signifies the end of the task. The tea is delivered. The night is secure. The storm may rage outside, burying the world in ice, but here the kettle is hot, the blankets are thick, and the silence is eternal. Thomas begins the long walk back to his own cell. He counts his steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. The stone passes beneath his feet. The shadows stretch and retreat. The night is long and there is nothing left to do but rest. The night deepens, stretching its dark fabric across the sky, wrapping the sanctuary of Saint Jude in a heavy, impenetrable cloak. Outside, the snow continues to fall. It falls in silence now, the wind having dropped to a low, murmuring hum that vibrates against the thick glass of the narrow windows. The flakes are large and wet, piling upon the sills, layering the roof slates, burying the stone paths in the courtyard under feet of pristine, unmarked white. It is the hour of the wolf, that indistinct period between the deepest black of night and the first gray suggestion of dawn, a time when the world belongs entirely to sleep. But in the linery, located in the east wing of the keep, the day's rhythm has already begun, quietly, softly, without urgency. Sister Agnes stands before the great cedar wardrobe. The room is windowless, insulated from the biting cold by thick tapestry-covered walls, and its position directly above the great ovens of the bakery. Heat rises through the stone floor, keeping the air in the linery permanently dry and toasty, a sharp and pleasant contrast to the frigid corridors that lead to it. The air here smells of baked bread from below, mingled with the sharp, clean scent of dried soapwood, pressed lavender, and the woody aroma of the cedar planks that line the walls. Agnes is the keeper of the cloth. Her world is one of texture and fold, of weave and thread. She does not deal in potions or prayers, but in the comfort of clean linen against skin. She holds a candle in a brass holder. The flame is steady in the draft-free room, a teardrop of yellow light that illuminates the grain of the wood before her. She places the candle on a high shelf, where its light casts long, soft shadows across the rows of shelving. Her task this morning is the inventory of the winter sheets. It is a task that requires no haste. The sheets are not going anywhere. The patients in the quiet ward are sleeping. The monks in their cells are sleeping. The world is suspended. She reaches out and unlatches the doors of the central wardrobe. The latch is brass, polished to a mirror shine by the friction of her thumb over 40 years. It slides back with a smooth, heavy resistance. The doors swing open. Inside, stacked in towers of perfect architectural symmetry, lie the sheets. They are made of heavy linen, grown in the valleys below during the summer, redded in the river, spun by the village women, and woven on great looms until the fabric is thick, durable, and creamy white. Agnes reaches for the top sheet of the first stack. She slides her hands under the folded bundle. The cloth is cool to the touch, smooth as parchment but with the subtle, microscopic ridges of the weave. She pulls it out. It is heavy. A single winter sheet weighs as much as a heavy wool cloak. She carries it to the long sorting table in the center of the room. The table is made of smooth, pale maple, sanded until it feels like silk. It is waist-high and stretches for 12 feet, a runway for fabric. Agnes sets the bundle down. She begins to unfold it. First, she lifts the top flap. The fabric sighs as it separates from itself. She pulls it back. Then the next fold. Then the next. She walks around the table, pulling the corners gently until the sheet is spread out fully, covering the entire surface of the wood. It is a vast expanse of white, glowing softly in the candlelight. She begins the inspection. She runs her flat palms over the surface of the linen. She is not looking with her eyes as much as she is seeing with her hands. She feels for snags. She feels for thinning threads. She moves her hands in slow, sweeping arcs like a swimmer parting calm water. Swish, swish. The sound of her skin against the dry linen is a whisper, a dry, rhythmic rasp. She finds a small imperfection near the center, a tiny knot in the thread, a slub. She stops. She rubs her thumb over the bump. It is firm, harmless. It stays. It adds character to the cloth, a reminder of the hands that spun the thread. She continues her sweep. Having inspected the sheet, she must now refold it. This is a ritual of geometry. She moves to the short end of the table. She grasps the corners of the sheet. She pulls them taut. The fabric snaps faintly, a dull thwack that does not echo. She walks the corners down to the far end, matching them perfectly with the other corners. She aligns the hems. The hem of the top layer must sit exactly upon the hem of the bottom layer. Not a fraction of an inch of deviation is permitted. She smooths the fold. She starts from the center and pushes her hands outward, pressing the air out from between the layers. The air creates a bubble that travels to the edge and escapes with a soft hiss. She presses down, flattening the crease until it is sharp. She folds it again, lengthwise. She walks the length of the table, guiding the fabric over. She aligns the edges again. She smooths the fabric again, press, glide, smooth. The motion is hypnotic. It is a dance with a partner that creates no resistance. She folds it in half widthwise. Then again. Then again. The sheet, once a vast landscape, is reduced to a compact, dense square, a brick of soft white potential. She lifts the folded sheet. It feels solid now, dense and unified. She walks back to the wardrobe. She places it on a different shelf, the shelf for inspected and ready. She pats the top of the bundle once, a gesture of completion. She returns to the wardrobe. She takes the next sheet. She carries it to the table. She unfolds it, flap, swish, sigh. She inspects it, rub, sweep, feel. She refolds it, align, smooth, press. There are 40 sheets in this wardrobe. Agnes has done one. She has all morning. She has all winter. She works in silence. The only sounds are the shuffle of her felt slippers on the wooden floor, the rustle of the linen, and the occasional settling of the building's timbers as they contract in the cold outside. After the 10th sheet, Agnes pauses. She walks to the small iron stove in the corner of the room. A copper pot sits upon it, filled with water and cinnamon sticks. The water is steaming gently, humidifying the dry air of the room to prevent the linen from becoming brittle. She checks the water level. It is sufficient. She holds her hands over the steam for a moment. The moist heat wraps around her fingers, softening the skin, relaxing the joints. She breathes in deep. The scent of cinnamon is faint, warm, and spicy, distinct from the cedar and soap. It is the scent of the kitchen, of comfort. She returns to the table. She takes a small wooden box from a shelf. Inside are sachets of dried herbs, clove, rosemary, and lemon balm, sewn into small muslin bags. She places one sachet on the shelf where the fresh stack of sheets is growing. She places the next folded sheet on top of it. The weight of the linen will press the sachet, forcing the essential oils into the fibers of the cloth, so that when a sleeper turns in their bed weeks from now, a faint ghost of the garden will be released. As she continues. Sheet number 11. The fabric of this one is slightly coarser. It was likely woven by a younger weaver, one with a heavier hand. Agnes traces the weave. She feels the tension in the threads. She treats it with the same care as the others. She smooths it down. She forces the air out. Whoosh. Sheet number 12. This one is old. It has been washed 100 times. The fabric is impossibly soft, like flannel, almost fluid in the way it drapes. It is thin but warm. It is the color of old ivory. Agnes handles it gently. She folds it with less tension, allowing it to settle into its own shape. The stack on the ready shelf grows. It is a tower of achievement, a physical manifestation of order in a chaotic world. Outside, the wind may be piling snow and drifts that block the roads, but inside, the sheets are straight. The edges are aligned. The hems are perfect. Agnes moves to the ledger on the lectern near the door. It is a large book bound in pigskin. She opens it. The pages are parchment, thick and creamy. She picks up a quill. She dips it into the inkwell. The ink is black, made from oak galls and iron salts. She writes the date. The scratch of the nib against the parchment is loud in the quiet room. Scritch. Scratch. January 14th, year of our Lord 1244, she writes the entry. Inspected, 12 sheets. Condition, good. Repairs needed, none. She blows gently on the ink to dry it. She watches the wet sheen fade to a matte black. She places the quill back in its holder. She returns to the wardrobe. She reaches for sheet number 13. The repetition is not tedious to her. It is meditative. Each sheet is a prayer without words. Each fold is an affirmation of safety. The world is reduced to the square footage of the maple table. The concerns of the kingdom of wars and famine do not enter here. Here, there is only the question of whether the corner meets the corner. And the answer is always yes, because she makes it so. She notices a small stain on sheet 13, a faint yellow mark, perhaps from a spilled drop of oil long ago. She wets her thumb and rubs the spot gently. It does not lift. It is part of the history of the cloth. She decides it is acceptable. It is clean, merely marked. She continues to fold. The heat from the bakery below seems to pulse gently through the floorboards. It travels up through the soles of her slippers, warming her ankles, her calves. The room is a cocoon. The light from the candle has burned down an inch, marking the passage of time. A dribble of wax has run down the side of the candle, hardening into a translucent tear. Agnes watches it solidify. She takes a brush from the wall, a soft brush made of horsehair. She brushes the surface of the table before laying down the next sheet, ensuring that no dust or lint will be trapped in the folds. Swish, swish, swish. The bristles whisper against the wood. She lifts sheet number 14. It is heavy, crisp, cold from the back of the wardrobe. She spreads it out. The air in the room catches underneath it as she fluffs it, creating a momentary billowing cloud of white that hovers before settling slowly, gracefully onto the table. It settles with a sigh of displaced air. Agnes leans forward, her weight supported by her hands on the table. She closes her eyes for a moment. She listens to the silence. It is a heavy, blanketed silence. The snow on the roof acts as insulation, damping all sound from the outside world. She is in the center of the keep, in the center of the mountains, in the center of winter. She is safe. She opens her eyes. She looks at the white linen. It is a blank page. It is a field of snow that is warm instead of cold. She begins to fold. Fold over, smooth down, fold over, smooth down, fold over, smooth down. The stack grows higher. The rhythm continues. The morning is long and there is no rush. There is only the linen, the warmth, and the slow, steady work of the hands. Deep beneath the stone floors of the apothecary, and deeper still beneath the warm, humming ovens of the bakery, lies the heart of the sanctuary's winter survival. It is the undercroft of the fuel, a cavernous, vaulted hall built into the very bedrock of the mountain. Here, the air is different. It does not smell of herbs or bread or linen. It smells of the forest. It smells of resin, of dried sap, of dusty bark, and of the deep, earthy musk of seasoned timber. It is a dry smell, potent and grounding, filling the lungs with the essence of trees that stood tall a century ago. The silence here is dense. The stone arches overhead are thick, supporting the weight of the entire monastery above. No wind penetrates here. No snow falls here. There is only the stillness of the wood, waiting to be consumed. Brother Clement is the guardian of the undercroft. He is a man of slow movements and few words, perfectly suited to the company of logs. He wears a heavy leather apron over his wool habit, stiff and creased with age, stained with the pitch of pine and the tannin of oak. His hands are large, the skin roughened like the bark he handles, protected by thick mittens of boiled wool. He stands at the entrance to the South Bay, the section of the undercroft dedicated solely to the storage of old oak. The lighting here is provided by lanterns hung on iron hooks driven into the stone pillars. The lanterns burn with a low, steady oil flame, casting long, geometric shadows that stretch across the floor like the trunks of ghostly trees. The wood is stacked with the precision of a mason laying bricks. Walls of timber rise 12 feet high, creating narrow corridors of wood. Each log has been cut to exactly 18 inches in length. Each log has been split into quarters or halves, depending on the girth of the original branch. They are stacked in a crosshatch pattern, 2 logs north to south, 2 logs east to west, to allow the dry air to circulate around every inch of the surface. It is a masterpiece of logistics, a library where the books are blocks of fuel. Clement enters the corridor of oak. He walks slowly, his heavy boots making a dull crunch on the scattering of sawdust that covers the floor. He stops before a stack that is marked for today's use. He does not simply grab a log. He inspects the pile. He looks for stability. He looks for the driest pieces, those that have seasoned for a full 2 years. He reaches out and touches the end grain of a log. It is a piece of heartwood, dark and dense as iron. He traces the growth rings with his gloved thumb. They are tight circles, concentric and dizzying, marking the slow passage of time when the tree was alive. He counts them silently. 10, 20, 30. The rings are close together here, marking years of drought or harsh winter. 40, 50. Here they widen, marking years of plenty of warm sun and heavy rain. This single piece of wood holds 70 years of history within its fibers. Clement grasps the log. He grips it firmly. He lifts it from the stack. It is heavy, dense with potential heat. He feels the rough texture of the bark against his mitten. It is craggy, furrowed like a plowed field, holding tiny pockets of dry moss. He pulls the log free. The sound of wood sliding against wood is a low, dry friction. Shhh clunk. He turns and places the log into a large wheeled handcart. The cart is a sturdy box of elm wood, mounted on iron-rimmed wheels that have been greased with tallow to ensure they turn without squeaking. He places the log gently at the bottom. He does not throw it. He places it. Thud. He turns back to the stack. He selects the next log. This one is lighter in color, perhaps from a higher branch. The bark is smoother, silver gray. He checks the end for checking the small cracks that radiate from the center as the wood dries. They are present, perfect little spiderwebs of separation that ensure the wood will burn hot and clean. He lifts it. Slide. He places it in the cart. Thud. The rhythm is established. Select, lift, turn, place. There is no urgency. The cart is large. It will take him an hour to fill it, and he has an hour. He has all day. The fires upstairs are burning, but the supply boxes near the hearths are still half full. He is working for the evening, for the night watch, for the future. He works his way down the stack, keeping the wall of wood level. He does not create a hole. He lowers the entire horizon of the pile, layer by layer. This preserves the structural integrity of the stack. It is a matter of discipline. After loading 20 logs, Clement pauses. He takes a rag from his belt. He wipes the sweat from his forehead. Though the undercroft is cool, the work warms the blood. He leans against the wooden handle of the cart and breathes. He looks up at the vast ceiling of the cellar. He watches a single dust mote float through the halo of light around the nearest lantern. It drifts, rises on a thermal current, falls, rises again. It is a tiny satellite in a wooden universe. He resumes his work. He moves to the kindling pile. Here the wood is different. It is birch, pale and papery. The logs have been split into thin batons no wider than 2 fingers. They are bundled together with twine. The smell of the birch is sweeter, sharper than the oak. It smells of spring, faint and distant. Clement picks up a bundle. The bark of the birch is peeling in thin, white curls. He runs a finger over a curl. It is soft, almost like skin. It makes a tiny crinkle sound. This bark is the finest fire starter in the world. It catches the spark instantly. He places 5 bundles of kindling on top of the oak logs in the cart. He arranges them so they nestle securely in the gaps between the larger rounds. He ensures nothing will rattle. Now the cart is full. It is a heavy load, perhaps 300 pounds of fuel, but the floor is level and the wheels are true. Clement grips the handles. The wood is polished smooth by decades of grip. He leans his weight forward. He pushes. The cart resists for a fraction of a second, inertia holding it in place before yielding. The wheels begin to turn. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The sound is low, a vibration that travels through the floor and into the soles of his boots. It is the sound of heavy things moving slowly. He pushes the cart down the long central aisle of the undercroft. He passes the pine bay, where the scent changes to a sharp, astringent resin. He passes the ash bay, where the wood is pale and straight-grained. He walks at a steady, plodding pace. His shadow stretches out before him, growing and shrinking as he passes under each lantern. He reaches the lift mechanism at the far end of the hall. This is a simple, ingenious device, a platform suspended by thick hemp ropes, connected to a system of pulleys and counterweights. It is designed to lift the wood up to the main floor, saving the monks from carrying heavy loads up the spiral stairs. Clement brings the cart to a halt. The wheels stop with a final, settling creak. He unlatches the gate of the lift platform. It swings open with a metallic clank. He pushes the cart onto the wooden platform. He centers it perfectly. If it is off balance, it will rub against the stone shaft as it rises. He checks the clearance on the left. He checks the clearance on the right. Satisfied, he engages the wheel lock on the cart. He steps back and pulls the signal cord. A small bell rings far above in the scullery hallway. Ding, ding. It is a polite request for elevation. He waits. He hears the answering pull from above, the engagement of the winch. The ropes tighten. They creak under the strain, creak, groan. The fibers of the hemp stretch and bite into each other. The platform lifts off the ground. Inch by inch, Clement watches it rise. He sees the bottom of the cart, the axles, the grease on the wheels. He watches until the platform disappears into the square shaft in the ceiling. The trapdoor above opens with a thud, then closes again once the cart has passed through. His work with that load is done, but his work in the undercroft is not. Clement turns and walks back towards the chopping block. It is a massive stump of elm, 3 feet wide, scarred by 1,000,000 blows. An axe rests against it, the head heavy and dull black iron, the edge gleaming silver and razor sharp. There are logs that need splitting, not for today, but for next month. The wood must be opened up to dry effectively. He picks up a round of green ash wood. It is heavy with sap, cold and damp. He sets it on the block. He examines the grain. He looks for the natural check, the weakness in the wood's armor where it wants to split. He finds a hairline crack running through the center. He picks up the axe. He does not swing it wildly. This is not a violent act, it is a precise one. He lifts the axe to shoulder height. He focuses his eyes on the crack. He lets gravity do the work. He drops his arms, guiding the axe head down. Thok. The sound is dull, absorbed by the wet wood. The blade bites deep, but the log does not split entirely. It holds together, stubborn. Clement does not struggle. He lifts the axe and the log rises with it, stuck to the blade. He reverses the tool in the air, bringing the back of the axe head down hard onto the chopping block. Wham! The inertia drives the log further down the blade. With a sharp crack, the wood surrenders. It flies apart into 2 perfect halves. They tumble onto the sawdust floor. The inside of the wood is pale, creamy white, smelling intensely of fresh sap and moisture. It is the smell of a living thing. Clement bends down. He picks up the 2 halves. He inspects the split faces. They are smooth, cool to the touch. He can feel the moisture on his glove. This wood is not ready. It will hiss and smoke if put on a fire now. It needs time. It needs the silence of the undercroft. He carries the halves to the green wood bay. He stacks them bark side down. This allows the sap to run out and the air to get in. He places them carefully. He builds the wall. He returns to the block. He takes another round. Lift, aim, thok, reverse, wham, crack, stack. The repetition is absolute. There is no variation in the movement, only in the wood itself. One log might have a knot that deflects the blade, requiring a second strike. Another might be straight-grained and pop open with a mere tap. Clement reads each piece. He adjusts his stance. He adjusts his grip. He is in conversation with the timber. He works for 20 minutes. The pile of split wood grows. The pile of rounds shrinks. The sound of the axe is a slow metronome in the quiet cellar. Thok, pause, thok, pause. After a time, he stops. He rests the axe against the block. He takes a broom made of stiff birch twigs. He begins to sweep the area around the block. He sweeps the wood chips and the bark flakes into a pile. The broom scratches against the stone floor. Scritch, scratch. Scritch, scratch. He sweeps the debris into a dustpan. He empties it into a bin for kindling scraps. Nothing is wasted. Even the dust will be used to bank the fires at night, to smother the flames into coals that will last until dawn. Clement walks to the far wall where a thermometer hangs. It is a simple instrument, a glass tube filled with spirits. He checks the level. The temperature is constant. Cold enough to prevent rot, dry enough to encourage seasoning. It is perfect. He sits on a low bench near the entrance. He takes a small whetstone from his pocket. He spits on it lightly. He picks up a small knife he uses for cutting twine. He begins to sharpen the blade. He draws the blade across the stone in a long circular motion. S-H-H-H, S-H-H-H. The sound is high and thin. He focuses on the angle of the steel. It must be 20 degrees, not more, not less. He watches the metal shine as the stone polishes the edge. He does this not because the knife is dull, but because the maintenance of tools is part of the silence. It is part of the waiting. He sharpens one side. He flips the knife. He sharpens the other. He looks at the rows of wood stretching out into the dark. Thousands of logs, thousands of hours of warmth stored in these silent corridors. He feels a deep sense of satisfaction. The blizzard may howl outside, burying the doors and freezing the windows, but down here the fire is waiting. The warmth is banked. The sanctuary is prepared. He puts the stone away. He folds the knife. He sits for a moment longer, his hands resting on his knees, listening to the nothingness of the underground. He breathes in the smell of the oak one last time. Then he stands. He adjusts his apron. He turns down the wick of the nearest lantern, dimming the light just a fraction to save oil. He walks slowly towards the stairs, his boots crunching softly on the sawdust, leaving the wood to its slumber. The afternoon light in the High Alps is a fleeting thing. It does not so much fade as it does retreat, the white brilliance of the snow-covered peaks slowly giving way to a soft, pervasive blue. In the scriptorium of the Sanctuary of Saint Jude, located in the upper reaches of the North Tower, this shift in light is the primary way of marking time. Here, the windows are tall and narrow, glazed with thick, distorted glass that turns the outside world into a blur of pearl and steel. The scriptorium is a sanctuary within a sanctuary. It is a room of hush. It is a room where the loudest sound is the friction of a sleeve against a desk or the turning of a heavy page. The air here is dry, kept so to preserve the thousands of volumes that line the walls. It smells of things that are old and permanent. The tannic scent of oak gall ink, the animal musk of vellum, the dust of dried parchment, and the sharp, clean smell of binding glue. Brother Julian sits at his carrel, a small wooden enclosure that shields him from drafts and distractions. He is the scribe of the winter annals. His duty is not to create new worlds, but to preserve the records of the old ones. Today, his task is one of restoration. He is tending to the catalog of alpine flora, a volume that has rested on the shelves for 80 years, its ink beginning to brown and fade into the page. Before he can touch the book, he must prepare his instrument. The quill lies on the desk before him. It is a flight feather from a goose, shed naturally in the previous autumn and gathered from the muddy banks of the lower valley. It is long, the shaft curving elegantly, the barb stripped from the lower half to allow for a comfortable grip. The barrel of the quill is cloudy and tough, hardened by months of curing in hot sand. Julian picks up his penknife. It is a small tool, the handle made of polished bone, the blade short, curved, and honed to a surgical edge. He tests the blade against his thumbnail. It catches instantly. It is ready. He picks up the quill in his left hand. He holds it up to the light. He looks for the natural curve, the way the feather wants to lie in the hand. He rotates it slowly. He finds the belly of the shaft. He begins the cut. He places the knife blade against the tip of the quill, about an inch from the end. He makes the first cut, a long, scooping slice that removes the top half of the barrel, exposing the hollow interior. The sound is a sharp snip, followed by the tiny clatter of the paring falling onto the wooden desk. The inside of the quill is white and pithy. He uses the tip of the knife to scrape out the membrane, cleaning the channel so the ink will flow unobstructed. Next, the side cuts. He pares away the left side of the tip, then the right. He narrows the point, shaping it into a distinct nib. He works with microscopic precision. A fraction of a millimeter too wide and the line will be clumsy. A fraction too narrow and the nib will scratch and splatter. He shaves a hair's breadth of keratin from the left side. He blows the tiny shaving away. It flutters to the floor. Now the slit. This is the most delicate moment. He places the knife blade in the absolute center of the nib's scoop. He presses down gently with his thumb. Click. A tiny fissure opens up the center of the nib. This split is the heart of the pen. It is what holds the ink, what allows the capillary action to draw the black liquid down to the paper. Julian examines the slit. It is straight. It is clean. Finally, the chisel cut. He places the very tip of the nib against a small block of ebony he uses for cutting. He angles the knife. He presses down straight and hard. Crunch. The very end of the point is severed, leaving a flat, square edge. This will give the letters their definition, the contrast between the thick downstrokes and the thin upstrokes. He holds the finished quill up. He looks through the slit at the candle flame. The light shines through the tiny gap, a sliver of gold. It is a perfect instrument. He sets the knife down. He places the quill on the velvet rest. Now the ink. The inkwell is a heavy cube of lead crystal, sitting in a depression in the desk to prevent tipping. Julian uncorks it. The smell of iron and oak rises immediately, a sharp, acidic scent that is strangely pleasing. The ink inside is black, a deep, abyssal black that seems to absorb the candlelight. It has been mixed with gum arabic to give it body, to make it sit proud on the surface of the parchment rather than sinking in. Julian takes a small glass rod and stirs the ink. He moves the rod in slow, concentric circles. He watches the liquid swirl. It is thick, like heavy cream. He lifts the rod. A single drop forms at the end. It hangs there, heavy and pearlescent, defying gravity for a long moment before detaching and falling back into the well with a silent bloop. The ripples spread out and vanish. The viscosity is correct. He is ready to write. He opens the catalogue of alpine flora. The binding stiffly creaks, a sound like a door opening in an empty house. The pages are made of vellum calfskin that was scraped and stretched a century ago. It is not white like paper, but a creamy, mottled beige, full of grain and texture. He turns the pages carefully, lifting each one by the upper corner. The pages rustle softly, a dry, shuffling sound. He finds page 42, the mountain Avens. The text is there, but it is a ghost. The original ink has oxidized to a pale rust color. Julian's job is to retrace the letters, to bring them back to life. He dips the new quill into the ink. He does not plunge it deep. He dips it only halfway up the slit. He pauses to let the excess drip off. 1 drip, 2 drips. He wipes the underside of the nib gently against the rim of the glass well. He leans forward. He rests his left hand on the page to hold it steady, placing a small piece of clean paper under his hand to protect the vellum from the oils of his skin. He brings the pen to the page. He hovers for a second, breathing out. He must align his hand with the hand of the scribe who died 50 years ago. He must match the angle, the pressure, the rhythm. He touches the nib to the vellum. Contact. The ink flows. He begins the first letter, a capital T. He draws the vertical stroke downward. The quill sings against the rough surface of the skin. Scritch. It is a tactile vibration that travels up the feather and into his fingertips. The black ink fills the faded brown channel of the old letter, covering it perfectly. The letter leaps from the page, wet and glistening. He lifts the pen. He makes the crossbar of the T, scratch, thin and precise. He moves to the H, a tall ascender. He starts at the top, pulling the pen down, then curving up and over for the arch. The quill moves with a slight resistance, a pleasant drag that allows for total control. He watches the ink trail behind the nib, a wet, black ribbon unwinding from the tip. He moves to the E, a small loop. He curls the pen around. He pauses. He dips the pen again. Mountain. M, down, up, down, up, down. A rhythm of peaks and valleys. Julian falls into a trance. The world narrows down to the tip of the nib. There is no snowstorm. There is no cold. There is only the flow of ink and the shape of letters. O, a perfect circle. U, 2 minims. N, 2 minims. T, a short vertical. A loop and a back. I, a single stroke. He goes back and dots it, a tiny diamond of black. N, 2 minims. He works his way down the page. The silence of the scriptorium wraps around him like a heavy blanket. The only passage of time is the accumulation of black words on the beige page. He breathes in the smell of the ink. It is intoxicating in its simplicity. After 10 lines, he must pause to let the ink dry. If he turns the page now, the wet ink will smudge onto the facing page. He cannot blow on it. His breath contains moisture that might spoil the gloss. He must use pounce. He reaches for the pounce pot. It is a shaker, like a salt cellar, filled with finely ground cuttlefish bone and sand. He shakes it gently over the wet text. SHHHSHHH. A fine white dust rains down, covering the black letters. The dust absorbs the excess moisture instantly. He watches the wet sheen of the ink disappear under the powder. He waits. He counts to 60 in his head. 1, 2, 3. He watches a dust mote dance in the shaft of light from the window. 30, 40. The room is so quiet he can hear the wax of the candle sputtering softly as it melts. 50, 60. He lifts the book. He tilts it vertically. He taps the spine gently on the desk. Thump, thump. The sand slides off the page and collects in the gutter of the desk, leaving the letters black and dry. He uses a soft rabbit fur brush to sweep the remaining grains away. Sweep, sweep. The text is crisp. It is permanent. It is renewed. He returns to the writing. Line 11. A description of the root system. The roots strike deep into the rock. He traces the word roots. The double O is satisfying to write. 2 open eyes. He traces deep. The ascender of the D and the descender of the P stretch out like reaching limbs. The light in the room begins to change. The blue of the afternoon deepens into the violet of early twilight. The shadows in the corners of the room lengthen, stretching out to touch his desk. Julian stops to trim the candle. He uses a small pair of silver scissors to snip the charred wick. The flame flares up, bright and steady, pushing back the encroaching dark. He checks the quill. The tip has softened slightly from the moisture of the ink and the friction of the vellum. It needs recutting. He wipes the ink from the nib with a scrap of linen cloth. The cloth is stained with 1,000 such wipings, a map of black smudges. He picks up the knife again. He places the nib on the block. He takes a sliver off the tip. Crunch. A new sharp edge. He resumes. He works for another hour. He finishes the entry for the mountain Avens. He moves on to the alpine forget-me-not. The Latin name is Myosotis alpestris. He savors the curves of the S and the loops of the L. His back aches slightly, a dull, familiar thrum that signals a good day's work. He stretches his neck, hearing a soft pop. He looks at the page. It is a field of order. The letters march in perfect rows, uniform and disciplined. Where there was once fading memory, there is now clarity. He decides it is time to stop. The light is failing, and to strain the eyes is a sin against the craft. He cleans the pen. He dips it in a jar of water, swirling it until the water turns cloudy gray. He wipes it dry. He places it back on the velvet rest, the tip pointing away from him. He caps the inkwell. The crystal stopper fits with a grinding twist, sealing the scent of iron inside. He closes the book. He does not slam it. He lowers the heavy cover slowly. The air cushion between the pages resists for a moment before the book settles shut. He engages the brass clasps on the foredge. Click, click. The book is secure. He stands up. He smooths the front of his habit. He blows out the candle. The smoke from the extinguished wick rises in a thin, gray line smelling of beeswax. The room plunges into twilight, illuminated only by the faint, blue glow of the snow coming through the window. Julian stands in the semi-darkness for a moment, letting his eyes adjust. He picks up the book. He walks to the shelves. He finds the gap where it belongs between the herbal of the lowlands and the treatise on mosses. He slides the book into place. The leather cover slides against its neighbors with a soft rasp. It fits perfectly. He walks to the door of the scriptorium. He opens it, stepping out into the spiral staircase of the tower. The air here is colder, smelling of stone. He begins the descent. Around and around he goes. The stone steps are worn in the center, cupped by centuries of feet. He keeps his hand on the central pillar, feeling the cold, rough stone guide him down. He counts the steps. 112 steps to the ground floor. Step, step, step. He descends into the deepening quiet of the monastery evening. The work of the day is done. The words are safe. The ink is dry. The silence is unbroken. The sun has long since dipped below the jagged spine of the western peaks, and the heavy blue twilight has deepened into true night. The wind has picked up again. A low, mournful tone that resonates against the slate roof tiles. But down in the south annex, tucked behind the kitchens, the storm is nothing more than a rumor. This is the chandlery. It is the domain of light. The room is long and low, built of brick rather than stone to better retain the heat. It is a place of profound sensory density. The air here is not merely warm. It is thick, heavy, and sweet. It smells intensely of the hive. It smells of summer meadows compressed into solid blocks, of clover and wildflower pollen, of the hard work of 1,000,000 bees, now rendered down into the golden substance of beeswax. Brother Anselm is the chandler. He is a man of small stature and infinite patience, his habit stained with the faint, waxy ghosts of 1,000 spills. He moves through the golden haze of the room with a shuffling gait, his felt slippers sliding over floorboards that have become polished and slick with decades of wax dust. Tonight is the night of the tapers. These are not the great altar candles, thick as a man's thigh, nor the votive lights for the chapels. These are the reading candles, the slender, utilitarian lights that will illuminate the monks' cells during the long winter evenings. They must be uniform. They must be straight. They must burn clean. The center of the room is dominated by the great vat. It is a cauldron of beaten copper, 4 feet across, sitting atop a brick furnace. A gentle fire burns beneath it, fed by the split oak from the undercroft. The fire is not roaring. It is a sleeping fire, designed only to maintain temperature, not to boil. Anselm approaches the vat. He stands on a small wooden platform that raises him to the correct height. He looks down into the molten lake. The beeswax is liquid, a deep, translucent amber color, dark as roasted honey. It is perfectly still, a mirror reflecting the ceiling beams. He picks up a wooden paddle stained dark brown. He inserts it gently into the wax. He moves it in a slow figure eight. He is checking the viscosity. If the wax is too hot, it will run off the wick like water, leaving nothing behind. If it is too cool, it will lump and flake. He feels the resistance against the paddle. It is smooth, heavy, like stirring warm oil. It is perfect. On the workbench to his right lie the wicks. They are lengths of braided cotton, imported from the warmer lands to the south. Anselm has already prepared them. He has cut them to exactly 12 inches. He has tied them, 6 at a time, to wooden rods called brooches. The brooches are simple sticks of hazel wood, smoothed and notched. There are 20 brooches lined up on the rack. That means 120 candles to be born tonight. Anselm picks up the first brooch. The 6 cotton strings dangle from it, limp and white. They are light, swaying slightly with the movement of his hand. He turns to the vat. This is the rhythm of the dip. It is a motion that Anselm has performed so many times that his muscles know the arc before his mind commands it. He holds the brooch horizontally. He centers it over the copper cauldron. He lowers his arms. Down. The 6 strings descend. They touch the surface of the gold. They vanish beneath it. There is no splash, only a silent envelopment. Anselm holds them submerged. He counts silently. 1, 2, 3. This initial dip is crucial. The air must be driven out of the cotton fibers, replaced by the wax. He watches tiny bubbles rise to the surface and pop. He lifts his arms. Up. The strings emerge. They are no longer white. They are dark, soaked through with the amber liquid. A stream of hot wax runs off the end of each wick, dripping back into the vat. Drip, 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 plop. The last drop falls. Anselm moves the brooch to the cooling rack. This is a large wooden frame with notches to hold the sticks. He sets the brooch down. The wicks hang freely in the air. He watches them for a moment. As the wax cools, it transforms. It shifts from clear amber to a cloudy, opaque yellow. It loses its shine and gains a matte finish. The liquid becomes solid. The chaos of the fluid becomes the order of the candle. He picks up the second brooch. 6 more white strings. He moves to the vat. Down, submerge. 1, 2, 3, up, lift, drain, drip, drip, plop. He moves to the rack. He places it beside the first. He picks up the third brooch. The process is a loop, a circle. By the time he reaches the 20th brooch, the first brooch has cooled sufficiently to receive its second layer. The wax must be cool enough to be firm, but warm enough to bond with the next dip. It is a delicate balance of timing. Anselm works his way down the line. The room is silent save for the soft shuffle of his feet and the rhythmic dripping of the wax. The air grows warmer as the heat from the vat permeates the space. It is a soporific heat, heavy and comforting. He returns to the first brooch. He lifts it. The wicks are stiff now, thin pencils of yellow. He returns to the vat. Down. He does not hold it as long this time, just a quick dunk to coat the surface. Dip. Up. He lifts it out. The fresh layer of liquid wax coats the solid core. It glistens. It adds a millimeter of girth. He hangs it back on the rack. He moves to the second brooch. Dip, up, hang. He moves to the third. Dip, up, hang. Round and round he goes. The candles grow. It is a slow accretion, like the formation of a stalactite in a cave or the growth of a tree ring, layer upon layer. Each layer represents a circuit of the room. Each layer represents 5 minutes of time. After the 10th dip, the candles are beginning to take their true shape. They are no longer strings, they are tapers. They are the width of a little finger. They swing heavily on the brooch now, their weight increasing with every pass. Anselm pauses to check the level of the vat. The level has dropped. The wax is now on the wicks. He picks up a ladle and adds chunks of solid beeswax from a pile nearby. The solid blocks slide into the hot liquid. They float for a moment, islands of yellow in a sea of amber, before slowly melting away, surrendering their form to the whole. He stirs the vat gently. The fresh wax melts. The level rises. He wipes his brow with his sleeve. The warmth is pleasant, loosening the stiffness in his shoulders. He resumes the dipping. 11th dip. The candles are the width of a ring finger. 12th dip. They are becoming substantial. He notices that the bottom of one candle on the 5th brooch is forming a teardrop, a bulbous accumulation of wax at the tip where the drips have congealed. This cannot remain. He takes a small knife from his belt. He waits until the wax is soft but not liquid. He reaches out and slices the nub off. Snip. The wax cuts easily like soft cheese. He tosses the scrap back into the vat to be melted down again. Nothing is wasted. The cycle is closed. 13th dip. 14th dip. The smell of the beeswax is hypnotic. It is a sweet, drowsy scent. It coats the back of the throat. It is the smell of summer trapped in winter. Anselm breathes it in deep. In, out. 15th dip. This is the final layer. He performs this last rotation with extra care. The surface must be smooth. He dips the first broach. He pulls it up slowly, steadily, ensuring the coat is even. He watches the excess run off. He waits an extra second for the last drop to fall. He hangs it up. He does this for all 20 brooches. 120 candles now fully formed. They hang in rows, a golden curtain of light to be. They are still warm, radiating a gentle heat. But the work is not quite done. While they are still pliable, before they harden completely into brittle stone, they must be rolled. Anselm waits. He touches a candle. It yields slightly to his fingerprint, warm and plastic. It is ready. He lifts the first brooch from the rack. He takes the candles off the strings, one by one. He lays a candle on a slab of polished marble that sits on a workbench. The marble is cool, contrasting with the warm wax. He places a flat board over the candle. He rolls it back and forth. Rumble, rumble. The motion is like rolling dough. The board evens out any lumps, straightens any curves. The candle becomes a perfect cylinder. It is smooth as glass. He picks it up. He inspects the base. He uses his knife to trim the bottom flat so it will stand upright in a holder. Slice. The cut is clean. The cross-section reveals the wick, a tiny white dot in the center of the yellow circle. He places the finished candle in a wooden crate. It makes a soft thud against the wood. He takes the next one. Lay on marble, roll, rumble, rumble, trim, slice, box, thud. He works through the batch. The crate fills up. Rows of yellow candles lying side by side, sleeping. They are identical. They are beautiful in their utility. Anselm moves with a trance-like efficiency. The repetition of the rolling is soothing. The sound of the wood on marble is a low, grinding hum. The pile of trimmings grows on the table. Finally, the last candle is rolled. The last candle is trimmed. The last candle is boxed. Anselm stands back. He looks at the crate. It is full. 120 hours of light packed into a box. He covers the crate with a piece of burlap to keep the dust off. He turns back to the vat. The fire is dying down. The wax is still liquid, but it will slowly solidify over the night, forming a hard crust on top. He places the wooden lid over the copper cauldron to keep the heat in. The darkness of the room seems to press in closer now that the reflective surface of the gold is covered. He cleans his knife. He scrapes the wax off the marble slab. Scrape, scrape. He gathers the scraps and puts them in the melting pot for tomorrow. He blows out the lantern that has been hanging by the door. The only light now comes from the glowing embers of the furnace grate, a dull red eye blinking in the dark. Anselm steps out of the chandlery. The cold air of the corridor hits him, a sharp shock after the tropical warmth of the wax room. He pulls his hood up. He smells the honey on his own clothes, a lingering perfume of the work. He begins the walk back towards the cloister. His steps are slow. He is tired, but it is the good, heavy tiredness of a job completed. The candles are made. The darkness has been held at bay for another week. He walks through the shadows, carrying the scent of summer with him into the winter night. The night has settled fully over the mountain. The blizzard, which had raged with such fervor in the early evening, has shifted its temper. It is no longer a violent assault, but a steady, relentless burial. The snow piles up against the stone foundations of the sanctuary, inch by quiet inch, sealing the building into the earth. Inside, the silence has deepened, growing heavy and thick, sinking to the lowest levels of the keep. Here in the north cellar, the air is not warm like the apothecary, nor hot like the bakery. It is cool. It is a precise, curated coolness, maintained by the sheer mass of the earth surrounding the stone walls. It is the temperature of a cave, constant and unchanging, immune to the freezing gales above. Brother Salas is the keeper of the stores. He is a tall man, stooped slightly from years of ducking under low lintels, with hands that are permanently stained with the juices of root vegetables and the oil of walnuts. He wears a heavy woolen tunic over his habit, for the cellar, while not freezing, chills the blood if one stands still for too long. He carries a lantern with a tin reflector, which throws a concentrated beam of light forward, leaving the rest of the vast, pillared room in deep shadow. The light cuts through the darkness, revealing dust motes dancing in the cold air, tiny particles of earth and husk that float in suspended animation. The smell of the north cellar is a complex perfume of survival. It smells of damp earth, of dry straw, of the sweet, fermenting tang of apples, and the heavy, savory musk of aging cheese. It is the smell of a pantry that is full. It is the smell of security. Silas approaches the apple racks. They stand in long rows like bunks in a dormitory, stretching back into the gloom. The racks are made of untreated slatwood, allowing air to circulate from below. Spread upon them, resting on beds of clean, dry rye straw, are the winter apples. They are russets and keepers, varieties with thick, rough skins designed to last until Easter. They are not the bright, shiny red apples of the summer markets. They are muted, bronze and green, with skins that feel like fine sandpaper or old parchment. Tonight is the night of the apple watch. It is a slow, methodical inspection to ensure that rot does not take hold. As the proverb says, one bad apple spoils the barrel. Here, one bad apple could spoil the shelf. Silas sets his lantern on a sturdy wooden crate. The beam illuminates the nearest rack. The apples sit in their rows, silent and still. They are individual worlds of sugar and water, waiting in the dark. Silas begins. He reaches out with a gloved hand. The glove is thin cotton, clean and dry, and picks up the first apple on the left. He holds it up to the light. He turns it slowly. Rotate. He looks at the stem. It is dry and withered, a small woody hook. He looks at the calyx at the bottom. It is closed and tight. He inspects the skin. He looks for the telltale darkening of a bruise, the softness of a brown spot, the white fuzz of mold. The apple is perfect. It is firm. It is cool to the touch, a solid sphere of potential sustenance. He places it back on the straw. He gives it a quarter turn from its previous position, so it does not rest on the same spot. This prevents pressure sores on the fruit. He picks up the second apple, lift, rotate, inspect, replace. The sound of the straw rustling is the only noise. Crinkle, shhh. It is a dry, whispering sound. He works his way down the first row. There are 50 apples in this row. He inspects them all. Lift, turn, look, place, lift, turn, look, place. At the 23rd apple he pauses. His thumb detects a slight give in the flesh. He brings it closer to the lantern. There near the top is a small, soft depression, no larger than a coin. It is the beginning of the end for this fruit. It is not a tragedy, it is nature. Silas takes a small basket from his belt. He places the apple inside. It will be taken to the kitchen tomorrow to be pared and stewed for breakfast porridge. It will not be wasted, but it can no longer stay here among the sleepers. He continues, 24, firm, 25, firm, 26. The skin is rough, textured like a map of a desert, firm. The repetition is absolute. There is no variation in the task, only the slight differences in the shape of the fruit. Some are perfectly round, some are lopsided. Some have small scabs on the skin where a leaf rubbed against them in the wind months ago. Silas knows them all. He treats them with a gentle, reverent indifference. They are inventory. He finishes the first rack. He moves to the second. He moves the lantern. The shadows swing wildly across the vaulted ceiling before settling again. He checks another 50 apples, then another. The time passes without markers. There is no clock here. There is only the count. 100, 200. The basket on his hip gains the weight of 3 more imperfect apples. The rest are safe. After the apples are secured, Silas moves to the deeper part of the cellar. The air here is heavier, pungent with the scent of dairy. This is the cheese aisle. Here the shelves are made of thick oak planks, bowed slightly under the immense weight they bear. Resting on the planks are the great wheels. These are cheeses made from the milk of the summer pastures, pressed into molds as wide as a shield and as thick as a Bible. They have been aging for 6 months, 8 months, a year. They are not white and soft. They are hard, encased in natural rinds that range from pale gold to deep, dusty orange. They are living things, breathing and maturing in the cool dark. Silas must turn the cheeses. If a cheese sits too long on one side, moisture collects at the bottom and the rind will rot. They must be flipped to ensure even aging. He approaches the first wheel. It weighs 40 pounds. He sets the lantern down so the light rakes across the textured surface of the rind. He sees the imprint of the cheesecloth that once held it, a fossilized grid on the surface. He rolls up his sleeves. He braces his feet on the flagstone floor. He reaches out and grips the sides of the cheese. The rind is cool, dry, and slightly tacky. He lifts heave. He tilts the heavy wheel up on its edge. It stands vertical for a moment, a heavy moon of food. He inspects the underside, the side that has been resting on the wood. It is slightly darker, slightly damper. He takes a stiff bristle brush from the shelf. He brushes the board where the cheese sat. Scrub, scrub, scrub. He removes any dust or loose crumbs. He brushes the rind of the cheese itself. Scrub, scrub. Now the flip. He lowers the wheel back down, but on its opposite face. Thump. The sound is solid. It is a dull, heavy impact that vibrates through the shelf. The cheese settles. Silas moves to the next wheel. Grip. heave, tilt, brush, board, scrub, brush, rind, scrub, lower, thump. It is a workout of slow, controlled exertion. Silas breathes rhythmically. In on the grip, out on the heave. The air in the cellar is cool enough that he does not sweat, but he feels the warmth generating in his muscles. He moves down the line. There are 12 cheeses on this shelf, 12 thumps in the silence. Thump, thump, thump. He reaches a wheel that is older than the rest. The rind is dark, almost brown. It smells intense, nutty, and sharp. This one is nearly ready. He taps it with his knuckle. Tock, tock. It sounds dense, solid all the way through. A good sound. He turns it anyway. It must wait another month. After the turning, there is the oiling. Silas takes a rag and a small jar of olive oil. He moves back to the cheeses he has just turned. He dips the rag in the oil. He rubs the surface of the rind. Rub, circle, rub. The oil darkens the rind, sealing it, keeping it from cracking. The motion is circular and soothing. He polishes the cheese until it gleams dull in the lantern light. He treats the food like furniture, like wood that needs to be preserved. One by one, circle by circle, the smell of the oil mixes with the smell of the cheese, creating a rich, fatty aroma that sits heavy in the air. Silas finishes the row. He stands back and wipes his hands on a designated cloth. He looks at the shelves. The apples are turned, the bad ones are culled, the cheeses are flipped, the rinds are oiled. The stillness of the cellar returns, rushing in to fill the space where his movements had been. He listens. He can hear the faint, microscopic sounds of the cellar settling, the ticking of a cooling stone, the rustle of a mouse far, far away in the grain stores, though the cats will see to that. He picks up his lantern. The beam of light swings away from the shelves, plunging the food back into darkness. This is what they need. They need the dark. They need the quiet. They need the slow, cold passage of time to become what they are meant to be. Silas walks towards the heavy wooden door that leads to the stairs. He checks the latch. He checks the thermometer hanging by the door jamb. It reads 38 degrees. Perfect. He steps through the doorway and begins to climb the stone steps. His boots scuff softly on the stairs. He closes the heavy door behind him. The latch falls with a final clack. Behind him in the dark, the apples wait. The cheese ages. The winter is kept at bay, one apple, one wheel, 1 degree at a time. The wind outside has shifted its direction, moving from the north to the northeast, pressing its frozen shoulder against the heavy stone walls of the west wing. But inside the sanctuary, the thickness of the masonry renders the gale into a low, resonant vibration, a deep bass note that is felt more than heard. It serves only to underscore the profound stillness within. In the wool room, located above the archives to benefit from the rising heat of the library flues, the atmosphere is one of soft, fibrous silence. The room is lined with cedar paneling, which absorbs sound and repels moths. The air here is distinct from the rest of the monastery. It is not the sharp, herbal air of the apothecary, nor the humid, yeasty air of the bakery. It is a dry, warm air, heavy with the scent of lanolin, the natural oil of the sheep, mingled with the smell of raw fleece, dust, and old wood. It is an animal scent, but a clean one, evocative of high pastures and summer sun, now trapped and preserved for the winter work. Brother Elias sits on a low, three-legged stool in the center of the room. He is the weaver and the spinner, a man whose hands are perpetually soft from the lanolin, his fingerprints worn smooth by the friction of 1,000,000 yards of thread. The room is lit by 3 oil lamps suspended from the ceiling beams. Their light is warm and yellow, casting soft, fuzzy shadows that lack the hard edges of the candlelight in the scriptorium. Everything in this room is soft. There are no sharp corners. There is only wool. Elias is preparing the fleece for the winter weaving. Before him sits a large wicker basket, piled high with raw wool sheared last spring. It is in the grease, meaning it has not yet been scoured of its natural oils. This makes it easier to spin, the oil lubricating the fibers as they slide against one another. The wool is a creamy white, stained slightly at the tips with the earth of the valley. He begins with the teasing. He reaches into the basket and pulls out a handful of the fleece. It pulls apart from the mass with a soft tearing sound, like cotton candy separating. He holds the clump in his lap. It is a tangled mass of locks, staples of fiber that are crimped and crisscrossed in every direction. He uses his fingers. He pulls the locks apart gently. He spreads the fibers. He is looking for debris, tiny pieces of straw, burrs, or seeds that got caught in the sheep's coat months ago. He finds a small piece of dried grass. He picks it out with his fingernails and drops it into a waste bucket. Plink. He teases the wool until it is a loose, fluffy cloud in his hands. It feels warm, almost alive. The heat of his hands activates the lanolin, and his palms become slightly tacky, coated in the natural wax that waterproofs the sheep. Now the carding. Elias picks up the hand cards. They look like large wooden hairbrushes or paddles, square in shape, with handles of polished ash wood. The faces of the paddles are covered in leather, through which thousands of tiny, bent wire teeth protrude. He holds the left card in his left hand, resting it on his knee, the teeth facing up. He takes a tuft of the teased wool and lays it across the teeth. He presses it down gently so the wire bristles catch the fibers. He takes the right card in his right hand. He holds it with the teeth facing down. He begins the stroke. He draws the right card across the face of the left card. A scritch. The sound is distinctive. It is the sound of wire on wire, muffled by the cushion of the wool. It is a dry, scratching sound, rhythmic and abrasive yet strangely soothing. He pulls the right card towards him, dragging the fibers through the teeth of the stationary left card. The wires comb the wool. They untangle the chaos. They force the individual hairs to lie parallel to one another. A scritch, a scritch, a scritch. He repeats the motion, down and across, down and across. With each pass, the wool becomes less of a tangle and more of a uniform sheet. The crimp in the fiber, the natural zigzag wave, is stretched and aligned. The wool expands, becoming airy and translucent, a web of white filaments catching the lamplight. Elias pauses. He transfers the wool from the left card to the right card by reversing the motion, pushing the paddles against each other. Then he transfers it back. This ensures every fiber is caught, Every fiber is combed. A scritchy grat, scritch scratch. The rhythm is mesmerizing. It is the heartbeat of the room. Elias does not rush. There is no quota. There is only the pile in the basket and the storm outside. He focuses entirely on the wires. He watches the dust motes rise from the wool as he cards, dancing in the halo of the lamp before settling back down on the floorboards. When the wool is perfectly aligned, light and airy as a cloud, he performs the doffing. He reverses the cards and rolls the wool off the teeth. It comes away in a neat cylindrical roll known as a ralag. It is a tube of prepared fiber, lighter than air, ready for the wheel. He places the ralag in a separate basket, lined with linen. It sits there, a perfect white sausage of potential yarn. He reaches for more raw fleece. Tease, load, scritch, scritch, roll. He works for an hour, filling the basket with rawlags. The pile grows. The raw wool shrinks. The sound of the cards is a constant, white noise friction that fills the silence of the tower. When the basket is full, Elias sets the cards aside. He stands and stretches. His back pops softly. He walks to the spinning wheel in the corner. It is a great wheel, also known as a walking wheel, though he has modified it to be used while seated for the finer threads. It is made of dark, aged oak, the wood turned on a lathe centuries ago. The wheel itself is large, perhaps 3 feet in diameter, with slender, graceful spokes. It is polished to a high sheen, reflecting the room. Elias sits before it. He checks the drive band. It is a loop of strong hemp cord that connects the large wheel to the small flyer assembly. He runs his finger along it, checking for fraying. It is sound. He checks the tension. He turns a wooden knob at the base of the assembly, moving the flyer slightly away from the wheel, tightening the band. He tests it with a pluck. Thrum. It is tight enough to grip, loose enough to slip if the thread jams. He picks up a ralag from the basket. He holds it in his left hand. He finds the end of the leader thread, the yarn already on the bobbin. He pulls it through the orifice of the flyer. He overlaps the fluffy end of the ralag with the twisted end of the leader. He pinches them together with his thumb and forefinger. He places his right foot on the treadle, the foot pedal. He pushes. A creak, a whoosh. The great wheel begins to turn. The drive band whirs. The flyer, the U-shaped arm that spins around the bobbin, begins to rotate. Elias pulls his left hand back. This is the drafting. As he pulls the ralag away from the spinning flyer, the twist runs up the fiber. The chaotic cloud of wool is caught by the rotation and twisted tightly into a strong, thin thread. Whir, click, click, click. The sound of the wheel is a symphony of wood and motion. The whir is the wind of the wheel cutting the air. The click, click, click is the sound of the metal flyer hook spinning. The thump, thump is the rhythmic beat of the treadle hitting the floor felt. Elias falls into the zone. Push with the foot, draft back with the hand. Let the twist enter the wool, feed the yarn onto the bobbin. Push, draft, feed, push, draft, feed. His hands are gentle. If he pulls too hard, the ralag will break. If he pulls too soft, the yarn will be lumpy. He feels the tension in the fiber. He feels the vibration of the twist traveling through his fingertips. It is a tactile conversation with the material. The yarn winds onto the bobbin, around and around. He watches the cylinder of thread grow. It is a creamy white cord, strong and even. He finishes one rawlag. He grabs the next. He splices it on the fly, overlapping the ends as the wheel keeps turning. The join is seamless, invisible. The thread continues unbroken. The wheel spins. The spokes blur into a solid disk of motion. The sound is hypnotic, a low, droning hum that vibrates in the chest. HMMMMMMMM. Elias watches the thread. He looks for slubs, thick spots. He finds one. He pauses the drafting hand, letting the twist accumulate in the thick spot, compressing it, smoothing it out. Then he continues. The room is warm. The smell of the warmed lanolin is stronger now, released by the friction of the spinning. It is a comfortable, drowsy smell. Elias' eyes are half closed. He does not need to look. His hands know the way. His foot knows the rhythm. He counts the rhythm of the treadle. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The bobbin fills. First the back section. Then he moves the yarn to the next hook on the flyer, guiding the thread to the middle section. Then to the front. He builds the package of yarn level and flat. After a long time the bobbin is full. It is heavy with wool. Elias stops the wheel. He takes his foot off the treadle. The wheel slows down. Whir, whir, whir. Stop. The silence rushes back into the room, sudden and profound. Elias reaches for the bobbin. He unhooks the flyer assembly. He slides the bobbin off the metal shaft. It is warm to the touch. He holds it for a moment, admiring the uniformity of the spin. This yarn will become a blanket or a tunic or a pair of socks for a brother working in the snow. It is condensed warmth. He places the full bobbin on a rack on the wall. There are 20 spindles there waiting to be filled. He takes an empty bobbin from a shelf. He slides it onto the shaft. He replaces the flyer. He rethreads the drive band. He picks up another rawlag. He finds the end. He places his foot on the treadle. Push. Whirr. The cycle begins again. Outside, the snow drifts higher against the wall, burying the window ledge. Inside, the wheel turns. The wool transforms. The night stretches on, measured not in hours but in yards of spun thread winding endlessly into the dark. Elias watches the flyer spin. It is a blur of motion, a circle, a cycle, like the seasons, like the prayers, like the sleep that waits for him at the end of the task. He drafts back, he feeds in. The thread grows. The world narrows to the point where the twist meets the fluff. There is nothing else, just the whir, the click, and the soft, white wool. The night has advanced into the deepest stretch of the dark, a time when the constellation of the Bear hangs directly over the central spire of the sanctuary. The storm outside has not abated, but here, deep in the south wing, beneath the heavy beams of the refectory, the world is defined not by cold, but by an enveloping, humid heat. This is the bakery of Saint Jude. It is the womb of the monastery. It is a place where the air is always 30 degrees warmer than the corridor outside, a tropical microclimate of stone and yeast. The walls are made of fire brick, darkened by centuries of smoke, retaining the heat of 1,000 mornings. The air is thick, white with suspended flour dust, and heavy with the primal, sour-sweet scent of fermentation. Brother Barnabas stands before the mixing trough. He is a man of significant girth, his shape mirroring the loaves he creates, built solid and sturdy to withstand the heat. His arms, bare to the elbows, are dusted with white flour, ghost pale against his skin. He wears an apron of heavy canvas, stiff with the dried paste of yesterday's labor. Tonight is the night of the black rye. It is the dense, dark bread of the winter, designed to sit heavy in the stomach and provide warmth through the long, freezing days. It is not a bread that can be rushed. It is a bread that demands force and patience in equal measure. Barnabas looks down into the trough. It is a massive coffin of hollowed-out oak, 6 feet long, its interior polished to a smooth, non-stick sheen by the friction of dough. Inside lies the sponge, the pre-ferment mixture he prepared 12 hours ago. It is a living thing. It bubbles softly, a gray, frothy slurry that smells intensely of vinegar and alcohol. It heaves gently, rising and falling with the breath of the yeast. He begins the addition of the flour. He walks to the sacks stacked against the dry wall. These are sacks of coarse ground rye milled in the valley below before the snows came. He lifts a scoop, a wooden shovel really, and digs it into the sack. The sound is a dry crunch as the wood bites into the grain. He lifts the scoop, heavy with the gray-brown powder. He carries it to the trough. He tilts the scoop. The flour cascades down, whoosh. It creates a cloud that rises up, coating his eyelashes, settling on the hairs of his arms. He repeats this. 5 scoops, 10 scoops. A mound of dry flour now sits atop the wet sponge like a mountain island in a frothy sea. Next, the water. He dips a bucket into the reservoir tank, which is fed by a pipe running through the chimney of the main oven to preheat the water. The water is tepid, perfectly blood warm. If it were too hot, it would kill the yeast. If it were too cold, the yeast would sleep. It must be exactly the temperature of a living body. He pours the water, splash. It creates a moat around the flour mountain. Finally, the salt, coarse sea salt, gray and damp. He scatters it over the flour. It hits the surface with the sound of falling rain. Patter, patter. Now the work begins. Barnabas plunges his hands into the trough. The sensation is immediate and encompassing. The flour is cool and dry, the water warm and wet, the sponge sticky and yielding. He brings them together. He rotates his hands, mixing, churning. He is a human paddle. At first, the mixture is a chaotic, shaggy mess. It sticks to his fingers, it clumps. But Barnabas does not panic. He falls into the rhythm of the mix. Lift, turn, press, lift, turn, press. He works from the outside in, scraping the flour from the walls of the trough and folding it into the wet center. The sound is wet and heavy. Squelch. Slap. It is not a delicate sound. It is the sound of mud, of earth, of substance. Slowly the chaos resolves. The shaggy clumps bond together. The flour absorbs the water. The dough begins to form a cohesive mass. It becomes heavy. Rye dough lacks the elasticity of wheat. It is dense, like clay. To move it requires the engagement of the shoulders, the back, the legs. Barnabas leans into the trough. He pushes the heel of his hand into the center of the mass. He folds the top over. He pushes again. Push, grunt, fold, push, breath, fold. The dough fights back. It is stubborn. It wants to remain a lump. Barnabas insists it become a structure. He works it for 20 minutes. The sweat beads on his forehead, catching the flour dust, turning into a paste. He does not wipe it away. He is focused. The dough changes. It transforms from a sticky, tearing mess into a smooth, gray boulder. It is slightly tacky to the touch, but it no longer clings to his skin. It is unified. Barnabas stops. He steps back. He is breathing heavily, a rhythmic huffing in the quiet room. He looks at the dough. It sits in the center of the trough, a sleeping giant. He takes a scraper, a flat blade of iron with a wooden handle, and scrapes down the sides of the trough, ensuring every scrap of dough is incorporated into the main mass. Scrape, scrape. The iron vibrates against the wood. He takes a heavy linen cloth, dampened with warm water, and lays it over the trough. He tucks the edges in. The dough is put to bed. Now comes the first rise. Barnabas has an hour. He cannot leave. He must tend the fire. He walks to the great oven. It is a cavernous mouth in the brick wall, wide enough to roast an ox. The door is a heavy plate of cast iron, counterweighted with a chain. He pulls the chain. Rattle-clank. The door rises. A wave of heat rolls out, hitting him like a physical blow. It is a dry, searing heat. Inside, the oven is a vaulted dome of white brick. In the back, a bed of coals glows with a pulsing, demon-red intensity. There are no flames now, only the pure, radiant emission of heat stored in the thermal mass of the structure. Barnabas picks up the peel, a paddle with a handle 10 feet long. He picks up the ash rake, a similar tool but with a perpendicular iron bar at the end. He inserts the rake into the oven. He scrapes the floor of the oven. He moves the coals. He pushes the unburnt wood to the side. He pulls the fine gray ash forward. The iron rake rasps against the brick floor. Scrape, hiss. The sound echoes in the dome. He clears the baking surface. It must be spotless. A single piece of grit will bake into the bottom of a loaf, cracking a tooth. He sweeps the ash into the trapdoor at the front of the oven floor. It falls into the ash pit below with a soft whoosh. He checks the temperature. He does not use a thermometer. He knows the oven. He throws a handful of flour onto the oven floor. Poof! The flour browns instantly, turning the color of tobacco in 3 seconds, then smokes and turns black. It is ready. If it had burned instantly, it was too hot. If it had stayed white, it was too cold. It is perfect. He lowers the heavy iron door. Clank. The heat is sealed in. He walks to the work table. It is a massive slab of maple, 4 inches thick, scrubbed white with sand and lime. He sprinkles a dusting of fresh flour over the surface. He casts it with a sidearm motion, like a sower sowing seeds. The flour lands in a fine, even drift like snow. He sits on a stool. He waits. He listens to the room. The fire pops softly behind the iron door. The water in the tank gurgles. The timbers of the ceiling creak as they dry out in the heat. It is a symphony of thermal expansion. He looks at the trough. The cloth is rising, imperceptibly at first, then noticeably. The yeast is eating. It is producing gas. The dough is inflating. The gray boulder is becoming a gray cloud. 40 minutes pass. The cloth is now a dome, rising above the rim of the trough. Barnabas stands. It is time for the scaling. He removes the cloth. The dough has doubled in size. It smells sweeter now, the sharp vinegar scent mellowed by the expansion. He plunges his hands in gently this time. He pulls the dough away from the wood. It releases with a tearing sound, stretching into long, sticky strands of gluten before snapping. He lifts a mass of dough, perhaps 20 pounds of it, and plops it onto the floured work table. Thump! It settles, spreading slightly. He takes his bench scraper. He cuts a piece off. He places it on a brass scale. The counterweight is set to 4 pounds. The scale tips. It is too heavy. He slices a sliver off. He puts it back. The scales balance. Clink. He takes the 4-pound lump. Now the shaping. This is the most hypnotic part of the dance. Barnabas cups his hands around the dough. He pushes it against the table, dragging it slightly towards him. The friction of the wood grips the bottom of the dough, while his hands pull the top skin tight. Drag, tuck, rotate, drag, tuck, rotate. He is creating surface tension. He is turning a shapeless blob into a taut, perfect sphere. The skin of the dough becomes smooth, tight as a drum. He checks the bottom. The seam is sealed. He places the round loaf into a banneton, a wicker basket lined with linen and heavily floured. He places it upside down, seam side up. The basket will hold the shape while it rises a second time. He cuts the next piece. Weigh, clink, shape, drag, tuck, rotate, basket. He works his way through the dough. 1 loaf, 2 loaves, 10 loaves, 20 loaves. They line up on the shelves, a regiment of sleeping soldiers in wicker helmets. Once they are all shaped, they must rest again. The gluten must relax. The yeast must recover from the handling. Barnabas covers them with the cloths. Another wait, 30 minutes. Barnabas takes a drink of water from a clay jug. The water is cool, a shock to his warm system. He wipes his face. He checks the oven again. He lifts the door an inch. The heat is still there, holding steady. The bricks are saturated with thermal energy. The time comes. The loaves have risen in the baskets. They are puffy, delicate. If he knocks them now, they will collapse. He prepares the oven peel. He dusts the blade of the paddle with semolina flour. The grains are like tiny ball bearings, ensuring the bread will slide off easily. He brings the first basket to the oven mouth. He tips it over gently. The loaf falls out onto the peel. Plop. It lands soft side up. It is a perfect round, pale and dusted with flour rings from the basket. He takes a lame, a razor blade mounted on a stick. He scores the bread. Slash, slash, slash. He cuts 3 parallel lines across the top. The blade parts the skin effortlessly. The dough gapes open slightly where cut, revealing the interior structure. This is not for decoration. It dictates how the bread will expand in the oven. It tells the loaf where to break. He opens the oven door. He slides the peel deep into the dark throat of the oven. He reaches the back corner. With a sharp, practiced jerk, he withdraws the paddle. Shh whip. The loaf stays behind, sitting on the hot bricks. He loads the next one. Tip, plop, score, slash, load. whip. He fills the oven floor, 3 rows of 4, 12 loaves at a time. He closes the door. Now the baking. Inside the dark, hot chamber, a miracle of physics occurs. The intense heat hits the dough. The water in the dough turns to steam. The loaf expands rapidly, the oven spring. The cuts he made rip open, forming jagged, beautiful ears of crust. The sugars on the surface begin to caramelize, turning from gray to gold, from gold to brown, from brown to deep, mahogany chestnut. Barnabas waits. He smells the change. The air in the bakery shifts. The sour smell of raw dough is replaced by the intoxicating, rich, nutty aroma of toasted grain. It is a smell that triggers a primal hunger, a smell that speaks of home and safety. 45 minutes. He opens the door. The heat that escapes now is scented with roasted rye. He looks inside. The loaves are dark, almost black in the dim light. They are solid. He inserts the peel. He slides it under the first loaf. He lifts it out. He holds it in his gloved hand. He taps the bottom, thock thock. It sounds hollow. It is done. He places the loaf on the wooden cooling rack. He unloads the others. Slide, lift, tap, stack, slide, lift, tap, stack. The rack fills with steaming bread. As the loaves hit the cooler air of the room, the crusts contract. They begin to crackle, crackle, snap, pop. It is the song of the bread, a whisper of settling crusts. It sounds like a tiny, distant fire. Barnabas stands back. He looks at the stack. 24 large, dark loaves. They will feed the brothers. They will feed the patients in the ward. They are nourishment. He takes the flour brush. He sweeps the work table. Swish, swish. He cleans the trough. He sweeps the floor. The bakery is warm. The smell is divine. The bread sings its quiet song of completion. Barnabas leans against the warm bricks of the oven, his apron covered in flour, his face flushed with heat. He closes his eyes and listens to the crackle of the crusts, the most comforting sound in the world. The storm is forgotten. The night is held at bay. The bread is baked. High above the sleeping monastery, above the warm, yeast-scented bakery, above the quiet rustle of the linenry, and above the silent stacks of the scriptorium, stands the Tower of the Hours. It is the highest point of the Sanctuary of Saint Jude, a solitary finger of stone pointing accusingly at the storm-laden sky. But inside the tower, the storm is irrelevant. Inside the tower, the only weather is the steady, rhythmic climate of time itself. This is the domain of the horologium, the great iron clock. The room at the top of the tower is circular, built of dressed gray stone that sweats a fine sheen of condensation in the winter chill. It is not heated. The heat would warp the metal, expanding the iron rods and slowing the drift of the hours. It is cold here, a crisp, metallic cold that smells of iron filings, of heavy mineral grease, and of old, dust-coated stone. Brother Cyprian is the keeper of the mechanism. He is an old man, his movements precise and angular, mirroring the machine he serves. He wears a heavy sheepskin coat over his habit, the wool turned inward, the leather skin facing out, stained with dark patches of oil. He wears fingerless gloves, for while the air is freezing, his fingertips must remain sensitive to the slightest vibration of the gears. The clock does not possess a face. It has no hands to point at numbers. It is a machine of pure sound and internal logic connected to a great bell that hangs in the open belfry above. But the bell is silent now. The hammer is locked for the night watch. The machine, however, never sleeps. It clicks, it ticks, it whirs. Cyprian approaches the central frame. It is a massive cage of wrought iron, black and imposing, standing in the center of the room like a skeletal beast. Within this cage, the gears turn. They are not the delicate brass cogwheels of a pocket watch. These are industrial wheels, forged by blacksmiths, as large as dinner plates, their teeth filed by hand into square, interlocking pegs. The sound in the room is a slow, heavy heartbeat. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The interval is long, 2 seconds between each sound. It is the sound of the verge and foliate escapement, a horizontal bar with heavy weights on either end, swinging back and forth, regulating the rotation of the great vertical crown wheel. Tonight is the night of the winding. The weights that drive the machine have descended through the long, square shaft that runs down the center of the tower. They have been falling inch by agonizing inch for 24 hours. They are now near the bottom, deep in the crypt level. They must be raised, or time will stop. But first, the inspection. Cyprian holds a lantern with a shuttered lens, casting a narrow beam of light into the heart of the machine. He traces the path of power. He looks at the great wheel, the primary gear that holds the rope of the driving weight. The rope is made of braided hemp, thick as a man's wrist, tarred to prevent rot. It sits in the groove of the wheel, taut and hard as iron under the tension. Cyprian inspects the rope. He looks for fraying. He looks for a single broken fiber. He runs his gloved hand along the section of rope currently on the drum. It is smooth, slick with a century of compression. He moves to the second wheel. This is the gear that transfers the power upward. The teeth are shiny where they mesh with the pinion of the next gear. Cyprian leans in close. He listens. He is listening for the cry of the metal, a high-pitched squeak that indicates friction. There is none. There is only the low, dull thud of iron meeting iron. Thump, thump, thump. He moves to the escapement. This is the brain of the clock. The vertical shaft spins but is arrested every second by the pallets of the swinging bar. Catch, release, catch, release. Cyprian watches the pallets strike the teeth of the crown wheel. He watches the tiny recoil. It is a violent action, yet contained, controlled, rhythmic. He counts the swings. Left, right, left, right. He checks the weights on the arms of the foliate. They are small bags of lead shot tied with leather thongs. If the clock runs fast, he must move them outward. If it runs slow, inward. He checks their position against the scratch marks on the iron bar. They are perfectly aligned. The time is true. Now the cleaning. Cyprian takes a rag from his pocket. It is a piece of old wool saturated with oil. He steps up to the lantern pinion, a gear shaped like a bird cage. He waits for the wheel to turn. As each bar of the pinion rises, he wipes it. Wipe. He waits. The next bar rises. Wipe. He waits. Wipe. He does not rush. He cannot rush. The machine sets the pace. He is subservient to the gear. He cleans the dust from the metal. He removes the microscopic particles of grit that the storm has blown through the arrow slits of the tower. He cleans for 10 minutes, standing in the same spot, his hand moving in a repetitive pecking motion. Now the lubrication. He places the rag away. He picks up a small pot made of horn. Inside is the oil rendered from the jaw fat of porpoises brought from the coast. It is the finest oil in the world. It does not freeze in winter nor gum up in summer. He takes a goose feather stripped to the quill tip. He dips it into the horn pot. A single drop of clear, viscous oil hangs from the tip. He locates the pivot hole of the main arbor, the axle of the great wheel. He touches the feather to the junction of the axle and the frame. The oil flows. It is sucked into the gap by capillary action. Bloop. The metal shines. He moves to the next pivot, dip, touch, flow. He moves around the cage. There are 12 pivots points. He oils them all. He oils the pallets of the escapement. He oils the bearing of the foliate. The smell of the oil is faint and organic, masking the smell of the cold iron. Finally, the winding. This is the labor. Cyprian walks to the side of the frame where the great iron crank handle protrudes. It is a heavy bar of oak, fitted onto a square iron drive shaft. The shaft is connected to the winding drum via a ratchet and pawl system. He grips the handle with both hands. The wood is smooth, polished by the grip of his predecessors. He plants his feet wide on the stone floor. He braces his shoulder. He pushes. The resistance is immense. He is lifting a stone weight of 300 pounds, currently hanging on a rope 50 feet below him. The machinery groans under the load. Crrrr click. The pawl, a small iron finger, falls into the teeth of the ratchet gear. Click. This sound is sharp, loud, echoing off the stone walls. It is the sound of progress secured. The weight cannot fall back. Cyprian pushes again. He rotates the handle a full circle. Groan. Crrrr click. He breathes in, he exhales, he pushes. Groan. Crrrr click. The rhythm is established. It is a slow, heavy rhythm of exertion. Push, turn, click, rest. Push, turn, click, rest. He imagines the weight in the dark shaft below. It is a block of granite bound in iron bands. With every click, it rises 2 inches. It swings slightly in the dark, bumping softly against the wooden guide rails. Bump, bump. Cyprian wins. He counts the clicks, 10, 20, 30. The sound of the ratchet is the loudest thing in the monastery, but no one hears it. The walls are too thick. It is a secret sound, a conversation between the man and the gravity he is fighting. He begins to sweat inside his sheepskin coat. The heat of his body is trapped by the wool. His breath comes in white puffs of steam that vanish into the dark upper reaches of the room. He winds for 15 minutes. His arms burn with a dull, pleasant ache. The handle turns. The rope coils onto the drum. The layers of rope overlap, creating a neat spiral pattern. Coil, coil, coil. Suddenly, the resistance changes. There is a solid thud from below. The weight has hit the stop block. It is fully wound. It is at the top of the shaft. Cyprian stops. He holds the handle for a moment, letting his breathing settle. He slowly releases the pressure. The pawl catches the final tooth of the ratchet. Click. The weight hangs suspended. The potential energy is stored. The clock has been fed for another 24 hours. He removes the crank handle. He places it in its rack on the wall. He returns to the front of the machine. He checks the beat. The violence of the winding can sometimes disturb the rhythm of the escapement. He listens. Tick, tock, tick, tock. It is steady. It is unperturbed. The machine is indifferent to his effort. It simply consumes the power he has given it. Cyprian walks to the narrow window slit. He looks out. He cannot see the ground. He sees only the swirling chaos of the snow, illuminated briefly by the light of his lantern reflecting off the falling flakes. The wind howls against the stone, a high, shrieking soprano to the clock's deep, rhythmic bass. He turns back to the room. He picks up a broom made of stiff twigs. He sweeps the floor around the machine. He sweeps away the dust of his own boots. Scritch, scratch, scritch, scratch. He sweeps in a circle, moving around the iron cage. He is the guardian of the pulse. The heart of the sanctuary beats because he winds it. The brothers sleep, the baker bakes, the scribe writes, all within the framework of hours that he maintains. He checks the oil pot, he caps it, he checks the rag, he folds it. He stands for one last moment before the machine. He closes his eyes. He lets the sound of the escapement wash over him. It is a hypnotic, trance-inducing percussion. Tick, wait, talk, tick, wait, talk. It is the sound of time passing, second by second, dissolving into the past. It is a sound that says, everything is in order, everything is moving, everything is safe. Cyprian picks up his lantern. He opens the heavy oak door to the spiral stair. The hinges complain with a low creak. He steps out onto the landing. He closes the door. The sound of the clock is instantly muffled, reduced to a dull, rhythmic thumping through the wood. He begins the long descent, down from the cold tower, down towards the warmth of the cells, down towards sleep, step, step, step. He descends into the silence of the rest of the monastery, leaving the machine to talk to itself in the dark. The hour is now indistinguishable from eternity. The night has reached its absolute zenith, a point of suspension where the rotation of the earth seems to pause, held in place by the weight of the snow and the silence of the stone. The storm, which had spent the evening howling its grievances against the mountain, has finally exhausted itself. The wind has died. The snow continues to fall, but it falls straight down, heavy and relentless, burying the world in a shroud of white silence. Inside the Sanctuary of Saint Jude, the activity of the day has been distilled into stillness. The apothecary is dark. The laundry is folded. The wood is stacked. The bread is cooling. The ink is dry. The only movement remaining belongs to Brother Augustine, the abbot of the keep, the shepherd of the silence. He stands in the center of the great hall. The vast room is a cavern of shadows, the high vaulted ceiling lost in the gloom above. The only light comes from the dying embers of the central hearth, a massive pit of stone where the great logs have burned down to a bed of pulsing, ruby-red coals. Augustine is the closer. It is his burden and his privilege to ensure that the sanctuary is sealed, that the fire is banked, and that the brethren are safe before he, too, can surrender to sleep. He wears a heavy robe of undyed wool, thick and coarse, belted with a simple leather strap. From this belt hangs the great ring. He lifts the ring. It is a hoop of iron, cold and pitted with age, holding the skeleton keys to the monastery's outer defenses. There are 4 keys. They clink softly against one another, a dull, metallic chime that does not echo, but is absorbed immediately by the darkness. Augustine begins the ritual of the banking. He approaches the hearth. The heat radiating from the coals is intense, a physical wall of warmth that pushes against his face. This heat must be saved. It must be preserved to kindle the fire of the morrow. He takes up the ash shovel. It is a tool of black iron with a long handle of hickory. He moves to the perimeter of the fire pit where the ash of the day has collected, a fine gray powder, soft as flour, cool to the touch. He scoops up a mound of the cool ash. The shovel scrapes softly against the stone. Shhh scrape. He pours the ash gently over the glowing coals. He does not dump it, he sprinkles it. The ash falls like gray snow. As it covers the red embers, the light in the room dims. The bright orange glow is suffocated, hidden beneath the gray blanket. He scoops again. He pours. He covers the center of the fire. He works methodically, building a mound of ash over the heat. By depriving the coals of oxygen, he slows their combustion to a near halt. They will not go out. They will sleep. They will smolder in the dark, hot and alive, waiting for the breath of the dawn to wake them. Augustine smooths the mound with the back of the shovel. It looks like a small gray hill in the center of the hall. The room is now almost entirely dark. The only light is the faint, blue-gray luminescence filtering through the high windows from the snow-covered world outside. He replaces the shovel. He turns away from the hearth. He begins the walk of the perimeter. He moves to the north door, the heavy oak portal that leads to the courtyard. He places his hand on the wood. It is freezing cold. The cold radiates through the timber, telling him of the temperature outside. He checks the bar. It is a beam of solid oak, 4 inches thick, resting in iron brackets. He pushes it to the right. It slides with a heavy wooden rumble, rumbly thud. It is seated. The door is immovable. He moves to the east wing. He walks down the cloister corridor. The arches here are open to the air but closed now by heavy wooden shutters. He checks the latches on the shutters. Latch 1, secure. Latch 2, secure. He feels the draft leaking through the cracks, a razor-thin ribbon of icy air that smells of ozone and snow. It cuts across the warmer air of the hallway, a sharp reminder of the protection the walls provide. He reaches the door of the dormitorium. He does not open it. He does not need to. He stands outside the heavy wood and listens. He hears the sound of the brotherhood. It is a collective sound, a low, rhythmic suspiration. In, out, in, out. It is the sound of 30 men breathing in unison, a human tide. There is no distress. There is no coughing. There is only the deep, heavy breathing of the weary and the safe. The air in the hallway smells faintly of the lavender from the linenry and the wood smoke from the hearths. Augustine nods in the dark. The flock is resting. He continues his walk. He passes the library. He opens the door a crack. He smells the old paper, the vellum, the ink. He checks for the smell of burning wax, a sign of a forgotten candle. There is none. The room is dead cold and smells only of dust. He closes the door. Click. He passes the kitchens. He smells the residual warmth of the ovens, the faint, sweet scent of the rye bread cooling on the racks. It is a comforting smell, a promise of breakfast. He arrives at the chapel. This is the last stop before his own rest. He pushes the heavy iron-bound doors open. They swing silently on well-oiled hinges. The chapel is vast and cold. The stone pillars rise up into a darkness so complete it feels liquid, but at the far end, hanging above the altar, is the sanctuary lamp. It is a single vessel of red glass containing a wick floating in olive oil. The flame is tiny, a single point of red light in the void. It does not flicker. The air here is perfectly still. Augustine walks down the center aisle. His sandals make no sound on the stone flags. He stops at the altar railing. He does not pray with words. He simply stands. He watches the red light. He breathes in the smell of the chapel, the scent of frankincense that has soaked into the limestone walls for 500 years, the smell of cold beeswax, the smell of silence. He stands there for a long time. He counts his breaths. He lets the worries of the administration, the grain stores, the roof repairs, the winter supplies fall away. They are problems for the sun. Here in the dark there are no problems. There is only the red light and the stone. He bows his head once. He turns. He walks back up the aisle. He steps out. He pulls the chapel doors shut. The latch engages with a solid, final clack. Now he ascends. He climbs the narrow, winding stair to the abbot's tower. The steps are steep. His legs are tired. He feels the weight of the day in his knees and the small of his back. He grips the rope handrail. The hemp is rough against his palm. Step, pull, step, pull. He winds his way up into the roof of the keep. He reaches his cell. It is a small room identical to the cells of the novice monks, save for a small writing desk near the window. He enters. He closes the door. He slides the small bolt. He is alone. The room is cold, but a small brazier of coals was placed here earlier by a novice. It gives off a faint, dying warmth. Augustine moves to the window. It is a small aperture covered with a pane of thick, bubbled glass and a heavy shutter. He opens the shutter for a brief moment. He looks out. The world is gone. There is no landscape. There are no mountains. There is only a swirling, gray-white curtain of falling snow. It falls silently, burying the window ledge, burying the courtyard, burying the path. The monastery is an island in a white ocean. The isolation is total. It is terrifying to some, but to Augustine it is a comfort. It means no one can come and no one can leave. They are held in the palm of the winter. He closes the shutter. He latches it tight. He draws a heavy wool curtain across it to block the draft. He turns to the small table. He lights a single tallow candle from the embers in the brazier. The flame sputters, then catches, casting a weak, yellow sphere of light. He begins to disrobe. He unties the leather belt. The heavy iron keys jingle as he lays them on the table. The sound is loud in the small room, jingle clank. The weight leaves his waist. He removes the heavy outer robe. The wool is thick, scratching his neck as he pulls it over his head. He folds it carefully. He places it on the chest at the foot of his bed. He removes his sandals. He places them side by side. He pours water from a pitcher into a small basin. The water is icy. He washes his face. The cold shock tightens his skin, then relaxes it. He dries his face with a rough linen towel. He washes his hands, scrubbing the ink and the ash from his fingers. He goes to the bed. It is a simple wooden frame strung with ropes. The mattress is a sack filled with fresh oat straw. It rustles as he sits on it. Crinkle crunch. He lifts the covers. There are 3 blankets, one of woven wool, dense and gray, one of felted wool, thick and soft, and a top quilt of patchwork furs, rabbit and fox, donated by the trappers of the valley. He slides his legs under the covers. The bed is cold at first, stealing the heat from his skin. He lies back. The straw mattress conforms to his shape, holding him. He pulls the blankets up to his chin. The weight is immense. It is a crushing, comforting weight that presses him down into the mattress, immobilizing him. He lies there for a moment, letting his body heat begin to warm the small cave beneath the furs. He feels his muscles loosen. His feet, cold from the stone floors, begin to tingle as they warm up. He reaches out one arm from the warmth of the blankets. He picks up the candle snuffer, a small brass cone on a stick. He holds it over the flame of the candle. He looks at the light one last time. The only light in the room, the only light in the tower. He lowers the cone. Snuff. The light vanishes. Smoke curls up, invisible in the dark, smelling of tallow. Augustine lies in the absolute blackness. He closes his eyes, though it makes no difference. He listens. He hears the wind, just a whisper now, brushing against the stone of the tower. He hears the settling of the timbers in the roof above him. Creak. He hears his own heart beating slow and steady. Thump, thump, thump. He visualizes the sanctuary. He sees the apples sleeping in the cellar. He sees the logs stacked in the undercroft. He sees the ink drying in the scriptorium. He sees the bread cooling in the bakery. He sees the clock ticking in the tower. He sees the brothers sleeping in the dormitory. He sees the ash covering the fire in the great hall. Everything is done. Everything is in its place. The inventory is complete. The doors are locked. The winter is outside. The warmth is inside. Augustine breathes in deep. He exhales long and slow. The darkness wraps around him like velvet. The weight of the blankets anchors him to the earth. The silence enters his mind, filling the spaces between his thoughts. He sinks. He sinks past the cold. He sinks past the snow. He sinks into the deep, dark, warm ocean of sleep. The snow falls on the roof. The clock ticks in the tower. The world sleeps.